7 out of 10 women who have experienced emotional abuse show symptoms of depression or PTSD. That's pretty high. That's a lot of women walking around here traumatized. It really is why I do the work that I do, because we want to believe sometimes that getting the divorce or leaving the relationship or getting at least into the separation phase means, oh goodness, we're in safe territory. We're over it. We can move on with our lives. Yeah, you can if This is the Joy Act, where finding joy beyond divorce begins with your understanding that the depth of your heartache shows the depth of your capacity for joy. I'm Dr. Lisa Summerour, and together we'll use accountability, alignment, communication, and trust to transform your journey. It's time to step into the Joy Act. Sometimes it's harder to leave a relationship than it is to stay free after you've left. And many women who have been in abusive relationships, emotionally and psychologically abusive relationships, learn after they've left that the abuse doesn't stop just because the relationship is over. You may be out of the house, but you're not out of being at risk to still being subjected to and traumatized by the emotional and physical abuse of the person that you've left. And in this episode of the Joy Act, I'm going to be talking about abuse from the perspective of someone who's actually left. The divorce has happened, or you're separated, or the breakup has happened. You're no longer living with the person. You both understand that the relationship is technically over, and you realize that the abusive behavior still hasn't stopped. And so you may be away from them, but you're not free. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this episode of the Joy Act. I'm Dr. Lisa Summerour. I'm the professional woman's divorce coach because I know that divorce does not stop at the door of your job when you go to work in the morning. And you want somebody who understands that, both professionally and personally, that those two aspects of your life are very much connected. And in this episode, like many episodes, I want to make sure that you have information and some education and some tools and strategies that you can use to help you if this is part of your current reality. And I also want you to be aware, because for many women who have left an abusive relationship, they've been told and led to believe that once you get out, you're going to be fine. You're going to be safe. Well, that is not what the statistics tell us. And that is not the reality for a lot of women. And even if it doesn't turn into anything that is violent, the emotional and mental trauma that you could still be under in dealing with your ex can be just as impactful, if not more impactful, than being physically with them on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to be talking to you about this, and I hope that you will post in the chat, has this been your experience? If you've gotten out of an abusive relationship, what was it like those first couple of weeks, months, even a year? Because for many women, it goes on much longer than they thought until they start getting the tools and understanding what's going on. Becoming aware of what's happening is going to be the first step in you being able to create a strategy and create a plan for you to be able to deal with this effectively. So women who have been separated, I want to give you some information. Women who have been separated from their ex experience violent crime at a rate that is double that of divorced women. Isn't that? Yeah, right. So the women who have been separated, they aren't divorced yet. Their experience when it comes to violent crime is double that of divorced women. And it's far higher than that of married women. In other words, divorcing and leaving, they see an increase in the violent crime. So leaving is not the end of danger. Sometimes it's actually the beginning for some women. So even if you're thinking, or you have a friend who's gone through a very difficult breakup with someone who was abusive, it could get worse. And I don't tell you this. This show is not here to alarm you. It's here to make you more aware. And I think being aware positions you to be more accountable, to take responsibility in the areas that you can. And yes, it would be great if we didn't have to do this. It would be great if this wasn't something we needed to consider. But the statistics say that we need to take some responsibility, because there are people out here that may not mean you well, right? And if you've been in a relationship with that person, leaving them is a start. I just don't want you to have a false sense of security. If you watched an episode I did recently, I interviewed a woman named B. Amina Apundo, and B fled her home country of Kenya with her two youngest children to Canada to get out of a abusive marriage after 30 years. The marriage wasn't abusive for 30 years, but it became abusive, and it took her several years to actually plan to leave. And so one of the pieces of advice she gave that I just love, she said, plan in silence. Plan in silence. So if you're listening to this and you're still in an abusive relationship, you haven't even made the break or the separation yet, I want you to understand that it typically takes a person, a woman, 6 to 7 times to actually leave permanently. There are 6 or 7 attempts at leaving before she finally leaves. So the best thing to do is plan carefully so that you can leave once. And B. Amina says she was in it for 30 years, but she planned well and she only had to leave one time. And it took her several years to plan because she had to get out of the country. And so you may not have to travel out of the country, but it doesn't mean you still don't need to put some real intentional time into planning and do it in silence. Only tell the people you absolutely have to tell. Only tell the people that you absolutely need to tell. Everybody else you can tell after the fact. But for those of you who are out of the relationship, this episode is definitely for you. And I hope it encourages you to become more aware and to start using some tools to help you stay proactive about you designing a life that doesn't just have you away from the person, but has you emotionally free of all of the things that were traumatizing you in that past relationship. This episode today is sponsored by my masterclass, 4 Essential Steps to Creating Joy After a Difficult Divorce. If you go to my site at drlisasummerour.com, you can actually take my complimentary self-assessment. It's the ACT assessment, A.A.C.T self-assessment. Take that assessment and see where you are in terms of your own personal accountability and feeling like you have created a life that's aligned, learning how to communicate first with yourself and then effectively with other people. And where are you with trusting yourself? This is a huge one. I believe trust is sort of the goal, and it's also that foundational element that holds so many things together. What does your gut say? Have you learned how to trust your inner wisdom, right? And so you can take the complimentary assessment and get access to my masterclass at drlisasummerour.com. So this episode is about emotional and psychological abuse and what it could look like after your breakup, your separation, or your divorce. So some of this stuff is a continuation of what you may have already been experiencing. And that's the constant criticism or critiquing, just harsh, negative, or maybe it's subtle, right? Maybe it's this passive aggressive type of insulting, or the backhanded compliments, as people might say. And it could be coming to you in text messages. It could be phone calls. It could be picking apart your parenting style now that you're separated, or complaining about what your parenting style looked like when you were together. Your choices that you're making in your life now that you aren't with this person. Your appearance. Are they commenting on things that they see of you on your social media? So that leads me to this. Go to your social media and stop following this person. I would say block them. You know what that relationship was like, but you need to ask yourself, if I block them, first of all, Facebook doesn't notify anybody that you've been blocked. Now, they would find out when they're not able to see you anymore, and they might figure it out, and that could cause an emotional flare up for them. And that too would be a sign to you that there's something in this relationship that's very toxic, right? So, but this is something that you can do for yourself, is limit the amount of actual contact and connection that you have with this person. And if it's not necessary, stop it. I did this with someone. We had only dated for a couple of months, really didn't go that deep or that far. But months later, I posted something on my social media, the one where we were connected, and they made this sort of sarcastic, snide remark. Now, I could have looked at it and said, oh, don't let that bother you, or, you're being too sensitive. Does that sound familiar? Because I used to get that one. I actually used to get that from someone I worked with, when they would give me a backhanded compliment or say something kind of out of line. and I would respond and defend myself, I would hear, "Oh, you're taking this too personally. You're being too sensitive." So this is something that you may be familiar with, and I could have done that. I could have played this mind game with myself to make it okay for this person to leave this comment, but instead, I made a really simple decision. I blocked them. No harm, no foul. Nobody lost anything. The sun did not stop shining. It did not start a torrential downpour. Nobody's life really changed that much. And I believe they were okay with it too, because it's not like they reached out and sent me a text and were like, "Oh, I can't believe you blocked." So, but that stopped it for me. And sometimes I really think these are those small choices that we can make, the small decisions that we can make that give us one step down that path of empowerment. And so if you don't need to be connected to this person, don't. Another thing that you can look at is the way they check in. Are they checking in with you? Does it feel more like surveillance or control? They disguise it as, "Oh, I just wanted to see how you were doing. So what have you been up to? So and so said they saw you out at dinner. So are you dating this person?" Right? These are check-ins. You do not owe, I just a few days ago, I did this video. You do not owe your ex access to your emotional space. And you do not have to have conversations with them about what you're doing in your personal life. And this is especially true if you don't even have young children that the two of you need to learn to parent together or apart, right? If you don't have young children or you don't have any children, you really have no reason to continue having conversations about what's going on with you in your personal life. And so the sooner and the sooner you can put a squelch to that, I think the better off you'll be. And it may be uncomfortable when you're doing it because you do have this emotional connection, or you did have this emotional connection with this person. And the emotional part might not cut off just like that. Okay. So getting divorced, leaving them, there may still be some emotions tied to what used to be or what you thought you could have had. And that might be very real for you, but you don't have to live based on those feelings. Got it? You don't have to let your emotions determine your actions. You can take the right action for you, and your emotions eventually will catch up with that action, with that behavior. Your behavior can change how you're feeling. So take the actions that are going to benefit you and let the emotions ride themselves out. Now, I'm going to go to this because it's one of my favorite things. Get a pen and a piece of paper and start writing things down. As things are happening between you, or even as you're just sitting thinking about things that have happened, I want you to write those things down. What are some of the things this person used to do or say that really made you feel bad, that made you feel uncomfortable, that caused you anxiety? Because that is how you're going to determine, is this what I want for myself? These are not the things I want. And when you realize the things that you don't want, you can start the list of, this is how I want to feel in a relationship with someone. Or how about, this is how I want to feel in a relationship with me, which will position you to not replay the negative language, the criticisms, the backhanded. It will keep you from replaying somebody else's tape in your head, because you want to create a healthy dynamic in the relationship that you have with yourself. Does that make sense? I hope so. Using children as a go-between. If you do have children with this person, there is a subtle manipulation that can happen in some of these exchanges. And one of them is using your child or your children to communicate between the two of you. So not only do you want to not have that happen to you, you want to make sure you're not doing that either. And so you want to figure out ways that you can communicate what needs to be communicated when it's about your children, without using your children as kind of pawns in this communication game, right? But these are some of the ways that this is what the emotional abuse can look like even after the divorce. Something else, cyber stalking. I'm going to do a show on when technology is used to abuse someone, because it's now a thing. But the cyber stalking, so that could be stalking you on social media, leaving those kind of comments, spreading rumors. sending texts to people. And this is why I really think one of the empowering things you can do, especially in the day and age of the phone, the text messages, the DMs, disconnect from this person on social media. And you have every right to tell your friends and acquaintances, family members that know the two of you, I don't want to have conversations about this person. And I would really appreciate you right now, while I'm in this healing process and this transitional period in my life, I would really appreciate if you don't give me information about them that isn't necessary. And unless you have children, or you have some kind of business thing that you've got to deal with this, it's probably not necessary. Do you need to know that somebody saw them out at a movie with someone else? Do you actually need to know that? So you're going to have to catch yourself when you're writing these things down. Be real. I'm not going to say brutally honest, because it doesn't have to be brutal. Just be honest with yourself. I still have some emotional ties to this person. I'm still having some sort of feeling about them moving on with their life. Be honest, because we very often walk around and go, I don't care. They deserve each other. He didn't mean nothing to me. I'm glad it's over. And you may be glad it's over. And you may still have some emotional feelings about the fact that it ended the way it did, or that it didn't go on the way you thought it should, that the dreams that you had for this person and your relationship with them are not going to happen. And that could leave you feeling a certain way. And this is why journaling is so good. Journaling is so good. For those of you who watch me, I will say I think therapy is another gift that you can give yourself. I'm a coach. Therapy is different than coaching. Your therapist may delve a little further back into that relationship and other relationships to help you connect those dots from your past. But as a coach, my job is to see you progress from where you are now. So I want to make sure that you have an understanding and awareness of what's going on in your life. I want you to start feeling empowered, because my goal for you is for you to move into the life that you really want to have for yourself, not be stuck rehashing the past. There are benefits to both. And you could get so stuck rehashing the past that you don't position yourself to move into the future that you want. So I want you to have the tools and strategies to start making changes like now, like today. And it's possible. So one more stat here. Excuse me, one more stat. So 75% of domestic violence homicides happen after the separation. And I'm not telling you this information to freak you out, to scare you. I'm telling you this information because I want to empower you with knowledge. I want to empower you so that you can be more fully aware of what the situation is that you might find yourself in, especially if you already know you were in an abusive relationship. 75% of domestic violence homicides occur afterwards. So just the words, just messages, this is often part of a bigger cycle that can escalate unchecked. And so what I mean by this is, you may have thought, you may have said to someone else, or you may have heard someone say, well, I don't feel like I have to worry about anything because they were never violent. They were never physical. What you need to understand is that 75%, all of those did not come out of physically abusive relationships. Very often, one abuse will be connected to another. They typically don't happen in isolation. And the emotional and psychological abuse kind of runs through all of them to some degree. I typically will say people don't always become physically abusive if the other abuses are working, right? So if the emotional and psychological abuse seems to be working, if they feel like they have the amount of control that they want with the psychological and emotional abuse, they might not become physically abusive. Except when you leave, they realize, okay, the other stuff I was doing might not have been working. I need to take this up a notch. And I believe that is often when things can turn into a physical situation where it had never been physical before. So again, not to freak you out, not to make you paranoid, but to educate you and have you be aware of what the potential is for you, and that there are things that you can do. So again, I always think, getting a coach, going to therapy If you feel like you need to call the hotline and have a conversation with a professional, if you need to go to your local police because you do realize it's already gone a little further with maybe stalking or visits that were let's see, visits that you did not want. That's what I'm looking for. If they're just popping up at your job, if they're just popping up where you live, these are things for you to pay attention to. And I don't want you to brush them off with, oh, they'll get over it in time, right? Be aware. Be aware. So what's the emotional toll for somebody who has done the work to get out of the relationship, to go through with the separation or the divorce, the breakup? And the trauma is still happening. So that self-doubt that you were experiencing while in the relationship is very likely it's still happening. And so you start thinking to yourself, okay, I'm out of the relationship. I must be overreacting. And it may be that people who care about you, friends and family members, are actually part of this because they're like, I don't know what you're worried about. It's over. Like you're divorced and it's over and you should just move on with your life. Well, understand, they weren't in that with you. And unless you have been telling them just how severe it was for you or what your experience was, and even then they may not fully get it, because as we all know, most abusers have one persona for you. You see the real them. Other people have been charmed into oblivion. And so they still think, wow, I just don't understand what happened. You guys look like the perfect couple. And so they may not be aware at all or fully aware of just how traumatizing that relationship has been for you. And so you are dealing with second guessing yourself. Okay, maybe I'm overreacting. They were just calling to check in. The divorce was 5 months ago. We haven't spoken in a month or 2 months or whatever. And they were just checking in, and I need to just calm down and not make it a big deal, right? Or they've been texting you every week since the breakup or the divorce, and you haven't been responding. And now you're starting to feel guilty. You're like, maybe I should just respond. And so what I want you to do first, I want you to track things like this. So if you are getting regular phone calls, regular text messages, whatever it is, I want you to keep a log, and I want you to start writing these things down because it may be information that you need for a later date if it doesn't end. But I also want you to look, are they coming in at a certain time? Are they coming in after they made a comment on Facebook or social media about you, and maybe you were out having fun and they made a comment and then you started getting phone calls? Is there a pattern to this, right? So yeah, play a little bit of detective in your own life just to kind of see when are these things happening? And am I still connected to them on social media? Because didn't I just tell you disconnect? But if you can look back and see that, this might be the motivation that you need to disconnect, because you're going to realize, oh, yeah, every time I have something fun that I posted online, that I'm out with friends or whatever, and I look like I'm having a great time, I start getting these text messages with all these comments in them. This is a good reason for you to understand why it's important to disconnect from this person on social media. And then you may see that those comments may stop because they're not getting the stimulation to have something to comment about. They're not getting the thing that they're using as an excuse to reach out to you. Now, if you don't have children or your children are grown, the next thing I'm going to ask is, what's the phone number still in there for? Can you block that phone number? First thing I would also tell you to do, the next thing, go in there and take their name out and put initials in. I want you to sort of deprogram yourself from this person. And I use the term deprogram because it takes a little while to make that emotional disconnect, like I've said. But I want you to start making the physical disconnections that you are capable of making so that you feel empowered, and it gives you time to really make a break. Because the divorce happened, but that relationship and that connection don't just disappear because you guys signed divorce papers. You're going to have to do a little more work to find the freedom that you want. Because like I think I said this earlier, you feeling free from this relationship is not the same as you changing your address. You can move away, move into your own place and do that. And it may take time. I have a client that I worked with a couple years ago. And over the last year and a half, Yeah, I think it's been over a year and a half since the divorce finally went through, but I have just watched her grow into herself as she's moved out of the house that they were in, off the property they were still sharing, as she's bought her own place, as she's fixing her garden and doing all of these wonderful things, as she's gotten herself comfortable enough to go back to work. All of the things that she has needed to do have taken time, but she had strategies and tools that we worked through so that she's now able to do these. Pretty much I get update reports now, which is often, and I will still send her encouraging messages, but she now knows that she's capable because she's put these tools and these processes in place. The invisibility that I talked to you about of your family and friends, of them not being aware of who this person has been to you, this is real. And what I want you to do, don't spend a whole lot of time feeling that you have to explain or over explain yourself to anybody, because that's an energy drain that you probably don't need right now. And so maybe you find a way to communicate to your friends and family, hey, look, I know the marriage is over. I know the relationship is over. What you don't know is what it took for me to get here. So I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things for me. I don't need updates on them, right? I don't need updates every time you see them out in the neighborhood, at the grocery store, on a date. I don't need to know about it. And be mindful. People may kind of come back and go, oh, well, I thought you were over them, or, well, if you were mature enough, or, take the high road. You may hear all these things. I want you to try not to take it personally, right? Because they don't know what they're saying. Okay. They don't know what they're saying. They don't really know what you've been through. And so the only thing you can do is continue to say, look, this is my request. I want you, I would appreciate it if you would honor that request. Is that going to be something you can do for us, for this relationship? And see what they say. Because the reality is, if they don't or won't, you may need to limit your communication with them too. And it doesn't matter to me if it's a family member, a friend, your neighbor, your kid. I am asking you to discontinue giving me all this information about this person, because quite frankly, it's nothing I can do with it. It doesn't benefit me to sit here and have a conversation. I am in a detoxing process so that I can move on with my life and rebuild it in a way that suits me. And right now, I don't need that extra information. Like, what is that information doing for me? And so you may need to, this is the boundary setting part. So one of the things that you need to know, because this could still be your reality if you don't start setting boundaries. Women who have experienced the trauma, let's see, I want to look at the numbers here. 7 out of 10 women who have endured emotional or psychological abuse, they show symptoms of depression and PTSD. Isn't that something? So 7 out of 10 women who have experienced emotional abuse show symptoms of depression or PTSD. That's pretty high. That's a lot of women walking around here traumatized. It really is why I do the work that I do, because we want to believe sometimes that getting the divorce or leaving the relationship or getting at least into the separation phase means, oh goodness, we're in safe territory. We're over it. We can move on with our lives. Yeah, you can, if you work at it and you're intentional and you have some strategies in place and have some tools to help you do it. But just all by itself, by osmosis, because you will it won't just happen overnight. It's going to take time, and it's going to take intentional work. And if you are a professional woman, if you're a business owner, if you have a lot of responsibility in your professional life, you really want to make sure that you have a way to integrate both of those things as you heal, because it's not happening in a vacuum. Your divorce did not know that it wasn't supposed to impact you at work. Nobody told it. It didn't sit in the car in the parking lot when you went into the office. So you want to understand how these things, so when you're talking about depression and PTSD as a result of having been in an emotionally or psychologically abusive relationship, it doesn't stop when you go to work. Some people are able to barrel through. Most people are going to be impacted at work. And in my book, Divorce is Not a Destination, I talked to, actually, she was a book coach that I used. Teresa said to me, when she went through her divorce, she felt like she was operating at like 10%. And I thought, wow, she said, yeah, it was like just enough to keep from just being fired. And I think many people can relate to that. I just actually interviewed my niece at an event last week. She's been through a divorce. She's just turning 40. And I asked her, what was it like going to work? She was an on-air anchor, an on-air journalist. And she said, honestly, there were some days when I was in a fog. And when you have to be on camera and look like you're holding it together and everything is fine and you don't have a care in the world and you're reporting other things going on, um, doing that's a really stressful way to have to get up and show up every single day to basically put all of your issues aside, not deal with the trauma, not deal with the phone call you just got or the information you just got, and go on air and present like you're fine. This is what happens to a lot of people in their work environments, whether they're on camera during the day or not. They are in meetings, they are interviewing clients, they are presenting in front of clients, they're teaching courses. All of these things are happening while real life is happening that has traumatized them. And so I want you to understand that PTSD and that depression are real. And if you are experiencing that, you have the right to create the space that you need so that you can really heal emotionally and so that you can have emotional freedom. Now, here's another stat for you. Women who are experiencing this kind of abuse, and this could still be after the divorce, more doctor's visits, higher levels of anxiety, yeah, and more health issues. So more doctor's visits, higher instances of anxiety, and more visits to the doctor. And this is without physical violence. This is not doesn't even involve the physical violence. I really want you to get how powerful words are and how damaging the emotional and psychological abuse can be from someone. And I'm saying words, and it's so interesting. If you've been through it, and I've been through this, sometimes the silent treatment, it's part of that abuse cycle. It's part of the manipulation. It's part of all of the things that they were doing intentionally to keep you off balance and to keep you guessing and to keep you coming to them to try to open communication. Let's just talk. Oh, is everything okay? It keeps you in this sort of pandering, panicky, anxiety-ridden state. So I'm saying words could hurt, but the lack of communication is also part of that manipulation. It's almost like the way that they punish you. So the freedom is not just about physical freedom. If you haven't gotten that by now, hopefully you're cluing in on this. Freedom is about your emotional freedom. It's about you taking the power back and taking responsibility for who is allowed to get into your emotional space. Who gets the honor and the privilege of being in your emotional space? And you are the person who holds the key to that room. You hold the key to that room. I said this earlier, I believe. You may be having some emotional feelings and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But you now understand that, okay, I can still make a decision that's a physical decision to block this person on the internet, because doing that gives you space. I can make the physical decision to stop receiving this person's phone calls, to not respond to the DMs. Those are physical decisions that allow you to have the space you need to start healing emotionally so that you can process some of what's happened. And the processing, get that piece of paper and that pen out and write some of these things down that you have experienced or that you continue to experience. And it's really important for you to identify the things that you really don't like, the things that were happening that made you feel some sort of way. Write those things down, because it's hugely important for you to be able to say, yeah, this was something that now that I'm thinking about it, it always made me feel a little sick to my stomach. Or I always felt like I was walking on pins and needles when this happened. Because if you can start identifying it and being clear with yourself about how it made you feel and being honest enough with yourself to go, never want to feel that again. And the next time I feel that, that's a deal breaker for me. It starts empowering you you can identify things in your past and get strength from that. And what it does is the next time that feeling hits you, the next time you have a similar experience, you will have already begun to program or train yourself to go, that's a deal breaker for me. That's something I'm not going to do. And the no is a clear no. And it's a no without a lot of explanation. Because one of the things that I've learned, I think we tend to, when we're in these dysfunctional relationships, we can be drawn into a habit or develop a habit of over explaining ourselves. We want to write long letters explaining what's going on. We want to have long conversations pleading our case or explaining why we did or didn't do something. And this is part of the game that they're playing, to have you feel like you're on edge or beholding to them for an explanation. And when you are able to discontinue that, it's an empowering moment. Trust me, it's an empowering moment. So the divorce papers may have ended the legal tie, but not the emotional leash that kept you connected, right? That's a shorter way of saying some of that. The emotional abuse is often a thread that is tying together other forms of abuse. I said they're usually connected. So it could be financial abuse, cyber abuse, physical abuse. You will usually find some element of emotional or psychological abuse is in there almost in every instance of abuse. I don't know that you can have another instance of abuse that doesn't have some aspect of the emotional or psychological abuse built into it. Because I believe the emotional and psychological abuse actually starts first. If you started dating someone and they stalked you online, the second date, you'd probably be like, I got to get out of here. If you started dating someone and the first dinner you had with them, they hit you for some reason, you ordered something that they didn't think you should order and they hit you, you would probably say, I got to get out of here. But when it's emotional, when it's psychological, it's easier for us to go, did that really happen? Or did I imagine that? Oh, they didn't mean that. Or this is when they start to gaslight you. Oh, you're being so sensitive. You know, I'm just joking. Oh my, you know how much I love you. I would never say anything like that and mean it. Right? So that's how that happens. The invisible wounds can cut deeper and take longer to heal than the bruises and physical wounds from a physically abusive relationship. So don't undermine or don't lessen the abuse because of the type of abuse that it is. They can all be extremely detrimental and traumatizing, and in some cases deadly, right? So researchers show that the physiological abuse is actually a stronger predictor of PTSD in women than the physical abuse. So the emotional and psychological abuse is a stronger predictor of PTSD in women than the physical abuse. That is how powerful the emotional and psychological abuse can be. So what they're saying is that the words and the manipulation that you experience can leave much deeper and more profound scarring than physical abuse would leave. Don't get me wrong. If you have been in a physically abusive relationship, I am by no means telling you, oh, it's not that big a deal. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is don't discredit, the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's not true. That's what I'm saying. Words can hurt you. Emotional and psychological abuse can hurt you and can linger in your psyche, in your body. It can manifest physically and do more damage than you expect if you aren't aware of what it's designed to do, because it is all part of the control mechanism that this person has been wanting you to live under. So I want you to reframe what freedom is, what it looks like. I want you to reframe it. I want it to be about you reclaiming your emotional space, not just relocating. It's about reclaiming your emotional space, not just about relocating to a different address. Getting out of the house, the apartment, or whatever, that's awesome. But you still will not feel free, even though you're not living with them, if there is still this emotional connection and the abuse is continuing past the breakup. So, some patterns for you to reclaim your joy. How do you get yourself on this path of really being able to breathe easy and really live your life with joy and to feel this emotional freedom? The first step is be honest with yourself and name what you were experiencing. And you can say, you know what? I was dealing with some financial abuse, and I was definitely dealing with emotional and psychological abuse. And that time when this happened, physical abuse. I want you to be able to name it. And if you want to get in the mirror and talk to yourself and say, you know what, you have survived, you know what you have lived through, you were in an emotionally abusive relationship. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And I am so proud of you that you have come through it and you are working to move yourself into a space where you feel emotionally free and safe. Say that to yourself in the mirror. It's okay. I really believe that our best communication has to happen with ourselves first before we learn to communicate effectively and impactfully with other people. I think we do a poor job communicating with ourselves. And when we get really good at that, it's easier to communicate with everybody else. So it's okay for you to get in the mirror and actually talk to yourself. And that's one of the things that you can say. So naming it, call abuse what it is. It's not a conflict. It's not a disagreement. It's not an issue we were having. We had some problems. No, it was abuse. It was abuse. Okay. That's what it was. That's what it still is. If it's still happening, it's still abuse. You can admit that you were out of the marriage, but you are still in an abusive relationship with your ex. Because as soon as you can verbalize that and be honest, it positions you to be able to do something about it. If you're in denial, you can't fix what you won't face. Okay. Next thing, one of my favorite things, boundaries. Boundaries in action, babe. You have to start setting some boundaries. And it may be uncomfortable. I almost promise you it will be. Because if you haven't been setting them, or you have not been maintaining them, or you haven't been honoring your boundaries, this could be challenging. When you're in an abusive relationship with someone, the last thing they want is boundaries. They don't honor your boundaries. They have gotten so good at not honoring your boundaries, you've stopped setting them. And you may even have made excuses. Well, they're so tired when they get home from work at night that I don't mind having to do blah, 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 blah. Even though what you really wanted to do after dinner was sit and read a book and just kind of detox from your day, you now find yourself catering because their day was always so much harder than yours. Okay, so your boundaries just like a brick wall. They don't get blown up all at once. It's sort of like one brick at a time gets taken out of the wall, a brick at a time. And then before you realize it, your wall of boundaries doesn't even exist. There's just holes all in it. So you're going to start doing boundaries, and you can do it slow. So one of the things, limiting communication with them is essential. So again, can you block the phone calls? If you have no reason to communicate with this person, it's okay to block the phone calls. You can either stop following them. I highly recommend immediately stop following them. But you can also just block them on your social media so you don't see their post and they don't see yours. And if we're honest, let's be really, really honest. How many times have you been going to their page to check to see what they've been up to? You don't want your friends telling you about it because you secretly been keeping track yourself. And in order to break yourself of that habit, stop following them. Okay, stop following. So you have to work harder if you're going to stalk them online. Let's use the language that's really happening. Are you cyber stalking your ex in the name of, I just want to see? Now I'm joking about this, but let's talk about what that really is. That emotional connection that you have with them. You moved out, you got the divorce, papers are signed, everything's separated. You got visitation with the kids every other week, or they did, or you don't have any kids and you have a dog and they get to, whatever it was. All of this stuff has been divvied up, divided up, and you are now legally out of each other's lives. Emotionally, might not happen so cut and dry and so clean. So you every now and then on a lonely night, laying in your bed or having a glass of wine or two or three, are inclined to just go, oh, let me just go see what they're doing. And you end up on your phone looking for them. And don't beat yourself up if it happens, but just acknowledge what's going on when it happens and how you're feeling and what is it that you hope to find. And how do you feel when you find what you do find? Are you upset when they look too happy on their social media? Are you secretly hoping that they look miserable and that whatever relationship they were in has ended horribly, right? Be honest with yourself. And then I want you to go, what difference does it make? Really? Like, what difference does it make in your life? What's going on with them right now? Don't make their life your business. And so block them. Parenting, if you do have children together, and that's going to be the thing that keeps you in communication, look at some parenting apps. There are parenting apps that are out there that can help you with scheduling, that can help you track and document your communication. So a lot of times when parents still have children under age, there may be still some legal things that need to happen. If there's a problem, you may have a mediator. Maybe your therapist is helping you with some of this. And there may be times when you have to go back to court because things that you agreed to aren't happening. So the documentation can become really important when it comes to that. I also would say if you are dealing with an ex who is constantly reaching out to you, children or no children, have a little notebook that you can sit somewhere and document it. Just a notebook. You don't have to keep it on your phone, but have something you can write down the day, the time. What was the communication? Was it a text message, a DM? Did you answer it or no? And what the communication was. You can even screenshot it if it was actually DMs. It's sometimes these things are good to have if things become a real problem later. We always hope that they don't, but if they do, you will have this information. Keep your responses short. Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. You don't have to over explain. So figure out what your answer is, what your response is going to be, especially if you're talking about things with your kids. Keep it short and don't over explain. Do you want to pick so and so up? Or, hey, I got one of these a year after the divorce. It might have been more than a year. I had moved out of state. And one day I get a phone call. I didn't even know they had my new number. It was like, hey, I'm going to be in your area driving through, going to blah, blah, blah. Would you like to meet for coffee? And it's like, what? And I said, no, actually, I wouldn't. That was it. No, actually, I would not. And the conversation didn't go on much longer because what else are you going to say? Now, I could have done, no, I don't really meet for coffee. It's not really a good time for me. What are you doing driving through the area? And then they would have, oh, well, I'm just here. So how have you been? And then you end up in this conversation. And it's like, I don't want to have a conversation with this person. And you don't have to feel bad about that. So that's another thing. It's okay for you to trust that God, Buddha, whoever you pray to, whoever they pray to, that the universe is going to take care of them without you being in their life. They're going to be fine because your job is to make sure that you are on the path to being fine. And it's no longer your responsibility for their fine or them being fine to be your issue. It's just not your concern. And you don't have to feel guilty about that. All right. So keep those responses short and you don't have to over explain or give any explanation. Your answer is your answer and everybody can be good with that. Reclaim your power. Every time you don't take the bait, you are reclaiming your power and you take back your emotional space when you do that. Now, you know what the bait is. Now I want you to be aware of the bait. There are some exercises that I give my clients. It's actually a gameplay checklist because what you didn't realize is that they have been playing a game with you for far longer than you know, but you didn't know that it was a game. But they have been in this manipulation game with you for some time. And one of the ways that you can start taking back your emotional space and reclaiming your power is to recognize the game and to start paying attention to things that they have done where you used to take the bait. So they might make a comment about what you're wearing or what you've been doing or something you said or something you did or you being at your job. I once had someone say to me, why are you getting another degree? What's the point at your age? You're gonna owe student loans when you're 80. And it was, who would normally try to insult somebody about wanting to get more education? And so when you hear comments like that, if you take the bait, what that looks like is you end up in a banter. You end up bantering with them back and forth about what's going on with you and your life and why you're doing it. So you're back to that explaining or over explaining. So don't take the bait. Keep yourself emotionally aware enough that you can respond and not simply react. And if this stuff sounds familiar, like if you're a professional, this is one of the reasons I love working with professional women, because I use much of the same stuff that I've used coaching executives and teaching people how to communicate better in the workplace and how to build teams and how to be, good leaders. It's the same. It works for us in our personal lives. You don't want to just be reacting to everything that somebody does. you want to take a minute and sit back a bit and say, do I even want to respond to this? And if I do, what's that response look like? And 9 out of 10 times, less is more. Not no, I'm not going to say that, cuz less is less. Less is not more. Less is less, more is more. Less is better. Excuse me, or maybe I should say this, less is effective, because there could be more than one way to be effective. Sometimes I think maybe snapping off a little bit to let people get people's attention, sometimes it might be necessary and effective. And you can also practice saying less, being less emotional, and watching to see if that's effective as well. Because, and the reason is people aren't expecting it. Because what you want to look at is what has the behavior pattern, what has the communication style been with you and this person in the past? And if it's been this high energy, kind of volatile thing, or they get real high energy and you kind of quiet down and just appease them, but now you're being firm, you're being clear, you're being concise. We're going to keep the responses short, right? And you're just saying, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't work for me. That's it. They're going to be thrown off a little bit. My mom said to me once, I think I was in high school. I know I was in high school. She said, people will change when you change. And I was like, but that they may not change. I thought we couldn't make other people change. What she meant was, they will change if I make the change in my life that I'm setting this particular boundary. So I'm going to use my 9 o'clock call because I like this one. So let's say I set a boundary that I'm not taking phone calls after 9 p.m. because that is my quiet time to start calming down and get ready for bed and give myself the next hour to just relax and do whatever. I'm not going to take calls at 9 o'clock. So people call me at 9:10, 9:15, and I keep answering the phone. And then one day it clicks. I'm the one not honoring my boundary. It's not them. So I stopped answering the phone at 9 o'clock. And for the first few times I get text messages, are you good? And the next morning when I talk to them, yeah, I was fine. But I have that 9 o'clock thing where I'm not answering calls. I'm getting ready for bed. So I was in the bathtub or I was reading a book. And they're like, oh, because I called you like 3 times. I thought nope, everything was fine. And this may go on for a couple of weeks, but most of those people will start honoring the boundary, not because of anything they did, but because you started honoring the boundary. So what my mom meant was, they will change because you have changed. And what you will learn is, for those of them who don't change, because people who want to be in control, people who have really strong narcissistic tendencies fall into this category too. People who want to win all the time. Those are the people who don't respect boundaries. And what you will have done when you start respecting your boundaries is they are going to become more noticeable for you. You're going to be able to identify the people who not only continue to call you after 9 o'clock, but are upset with you because you don't take their call. And it's not an emergency, but they just can't stand the fact that you have set a boundary that you are honoring, and you are forcing them to abide by it, that you are expecting them to abide by it. It's going to tell you something about the character of that person. And then you get to make another decision. Is this somebody you even want in your life? Like, why do they even have my number? Right? So keep your responses short, reclaim your power by not taking the bait. And these things that I've been sharing with you are all part of my framework. They really are tied into my proprietary framework, ACT. It's A.A.C.T, accountability, alignment, communication, and trust, because I use those 4 things to help people find what the things are that they value, how they're going to hold themselves accountable, what healthy communication looks and feels like. And all of this helps them learn to trust themselves different. It teaches you to trust your own intuition, or that inner wisdom, as I like to call it. So I want to give you another little stat here. Women who have been separated actually have a higher risk of violence. And so every time you set a boundary, it's not just for your peace. It could actually be for your safety. Okay? It could actually be for your safety. And another boundary, this is something I learned from A.A.C.T. I love the plan in silence. You don't have to tell everybody everything that you're doing all the time, especially if you've just ended your relationship, because you may have mutual friends and your ex doesn't need to know everything you're doing, where you're going, who you're doing it with, especially if you were in an abusive relationship or a relationship where they wanted to control you, because they may be going through a period where they feel like they've lost control and they're trying to figure out what they need to do to regain it. And knowing what you're doing all the time, getting information from friends, may be how they're keeping feeling like they're still in some control. So be mindful of what you're sharing, who you're sharing it with, and why you're even sharing it. So I want to talk to you about just I talked to Bia Amina, and she talked about leaving Kenya, ending up in Canada, and working a job where she was getting home at night, and she said she felt like she was being followed. She started having this feeling like somebody was following her. Now, at this point, she is going to therapy. And this is before she became a trauma recovery coach herself. And a lot of us who have been through difficult divorces or breakups or whatever, this is some of the reason we end up doing this work, is because we've been through this, right? And so she's been through this thing of feeling like she just can't shake this feeling of somebody following her, of being uncomfortable, of feeling anxious all the time. And it took her some time to get through it, but she did work through it. And so that feeling of being trapped is very real for you, and you need to honor it if that's what you're experiencing. So avoid allowing people to talk you out of dealing with that or addressing it or even acknowledging it. It's a feeling, and it will eventually go away if you're working at it. But the first thing you got to do in order to fix it is you got to face it. You can't deny that something exists and then think you're going to address it. You're just denying it. It doesn't make it go away. And you want to move through these things. You don't want to just avoid them. You want to be able to process them, get a level of understanding of what was causing them, how they were impacting you, and then determine, okay, what do I want to be different now? What is it that I need to do for this to be different for me now? Because this is something I don't want to have impacting me in this way indefinitely, right? So invite the courage. Freedom is a process that you need to move through a process to experience that freedom. And it's also a practice. So setting boundaries, that's a practice. Inviting joy into your life is a practice. Saying no to things because they don't feel right, it's a practice. And the more you practice these things, and you can start with little baby steps, but the more you practice these things, the better at them you will get. Every single step that you can take to reclaim your voice, and regain a sense of peace, a sense of peacefulness. Every one of those steps matters. And there actually is no step that's too small. So this whole idea that, oh, you're divorced, everything should be fine, you should be so happy now, at least you're out of the house, the divorce is finalized, get on with your life, fall in love again. This all sounds great, but it rarely happens like that quickly. So show yourself grace. Find that those moments of peace, those spaces for peace. Find those small moments and really embrace them, and just revel in those. The moments where you really feel free and light, pay attention to what you were doing that caused that, so that you can do it intentionally and bring on more of that. And that's as powerful, actually more powerful even, than identifying the things that make you uncomfortable. They're both important, but if you can start living into the things that bring you joy, you can usher more of that into your life, because you'll be anticipating it. And then you start finding ways to just create it, and it gets all crazy, happy, joyful. I do want to give you this reminder. If you are listening to this and you are in some sort of crisis, or you know someone who is, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE, or online, it's thehotline.org. I want to make sure I got that right. Yes, thehotline.org. If you're online and you want to type in and get help with someone. I want to thank you for being with me today. And I have a question I want to ask you, as if you were one of my guests on this episode. I want you to ask yourself, what does joy feel like for you? And if you don't know what it feels like right now, what would you like it to look like? What would you like joy to feel like for you? I want you to imagine that. And if you can think of something that would represent joy for you, write it down. Write it down so you have it to look at. And look, I give you permission to change it whenever you want. If you get up in a week and go, you know what, I'm changing my mind, or I'm adding to my list of what joy looks and feels like, add to that list, grow that list. Because once you have that in front of you, you are just naturally going to want to make those things happen. You're going to want to manifest that stuff. But first, we got to identify it before you can create a path to it, right? You gotta have a place to go before you can figure out how you're going to get to it. Otherwise, you're just wandering around aimlessly. So I'm Dr. Lisa Summerour. It has been a pleasure being here with you this episode. Hit the subscribe button. And if this blessed you, if you got information out of this that helped you, I want you to share it with somebody else who you think would benefit from hearing this episode. I'll see you again next week. In the meantime, go out and create joy for yourself, because there is joy beyond divorce.